Hello and welcome to the 2020 FIA Gran Turismo Championships. We're back in action once again for the top 16 superstars. It is the final couple of rounds of Stage 3. Jimmy Broadbent, you're looking very fresh-faced, if I may say, first of all.
I know, I was pinned down to the floor and shaved by my producer, which is something that you usually have to go to a dark place of the internet to find, not using the Gran Turismo. But it's for the best, though. I think I look at it's a lot cooler as well.
It was a fun end to the show last week, as a result of that. We've got lots of action coming up for you today. Nations Cup Manufacturer Series. Let's have a look at Nations Cup. We've got three drivers battling for the championship. Andrew Brooks, Danny Solis, Randall Hayward. Who's your money on for this one?
You know what? I'd say realistically it's between Solis and Brooks. They've been the fastest guys, I think, clearly, for the rest of the field. Hayward's done a really good job to still be within contention as well from very strong results, but I think in a straight race it's going to really be between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got, as we said, action from the Nations Cup and the Manufacturer Series. Let's take a look first of all at the Nations Cup, shall we, and just see a bit more about the details. You can see we're in Group 3 cars at the Dragon Trail Seaside 2 circuit. Racing hard and medium tyres available for these drivers here, Jimmy, in Group 3 cars. An element of strategy has got to come into play here as a result of that. What do you think the drivers are going to be doing for this race? How are they going to be looking at it?
Yeah, strategy is always there. It comes into all these races, of course. And we always say that hard compound, just get rid of that straight away. Don't worry about any laps on that. Gone.
Sack it off.
Yeah, pretty much. So one of the big things, of course, it being Nations Cup, is that car choice is important. We've seen that in previous races too. People are opting a lot for the front end cars, so the Vantage and the Supra, very popular here.
At the Dragon Trail Seaside 2 layout, so essentially in reverse compared to the normal layout. So does that mean the chicane of death becomes the chicane of life?
Yeah, more cars are going to be revived as we go through after that, it seems. Yeah, racing hard and medium tyres around here, of course, so as always, strategy. But our strategy usually is get the hard compound tyre out the window.
Throw it away. Throw it away. Get onto the mediums for as long as you can. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the name of the game. We always talk about strategy, but the thing is with these drivers, they don't want to use those hard tyres for 5-6 laps, because it's going to cost them more than they'll gain.
No, I mean, the big strategy choice here is what car taking. It's Nations Cup, so car choices are completely open. Front engine cars have been very popular, so Supra, Vantage, seen a McLaren as well going around. So, but it tends to be towards those sort of front engine cars. So apparently they're a bit more stable.
Yeah, stability is going to be crucial around this circuit, given how many flowing corners there are and so on, especially if you're stuck in the dirty air of a car behind going through that chicane and so on and so forth. 20 laps, as we know, at this circuit, a fuel multiplier, a tyre multiplier as well. Yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to play out with this.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, between Brooks and Solis, so...
Absolutely. Let's head over to the grid, shall we? See how the drivers are lining up. Over to the grid then for the start of the Nations Cup race for round 28 of the top 16 superstars. It's the North America region. And here is how our Group 3 cars line up. Tristan Bayless starts on pole position in the Aston V12 Vantage. Alongside him on that front row, Robbie Head. Good qualifying for him after a difficult couple of rounds. Nice to see him back at the sharp end in the McLaren. Andrew Brooks always at the sharp end as well. He's in the Nissan Gtr lining up P3 with Mark Pennell, the Canadian, alongside him in the second of the Aston V12 Vantages. Then comes Danny Solis in the bright pink V12. Alongside him is Randall Hayward, also opting for a Nissan Gtr in this one. Let's see what Randall can do from P6. P7, Kevin Pounder. He's been there and thereabouts all year. Let's see if he can break into the top 5, maybe the podium. What about David Mitchell there as well? He is in the Dodge Viper SRT. Donovan Parker lines up in P9. P10 is Chris Lynch. 11th position is Grove. And then alongside him on that row of the grid is the Volkswagen Beetle of Rayner. I believe a brand new name to the top 16, so welcome along to them. Pickering, also definitely a brand new name there. Two Canadians joining the field here, again in the Volkswagen Beetle. Watson, there's a trio of Canadians just outside of the top 10, so by the looks of things. Brilliant to see. Leslie lines up in P15. And alongside him on the final row of the grid is Stewart. And apologies, by the way, to David Mitchell. I call him David Mitchell. It's actually Daniel Mitchell, and he lines up, as we can see, in P8. So we can see the first look at the tyre choices there then, Jimmy. A lot of the top guys there, top 5 in particular, starting on the medium tyres. What's their strat going to be?
Well, we've had a little bit of the benefit of hindsight, really, here. We've seen some people in different regions go for quite long stints on the hard compounder tyre and make it work. But we do kind of see that the time we want to spend on that hard tyre may be limited to about 2 or 3 laps before maybe double stinting the medium. So two-stop strategy I think we're going to see today. Bayless will lead the field as well. Great qualifying for Bayless. First time I think we've seen him on pole in Nations Cup.
Yeah, very impressive stuff from Bailey. So you can see the tyre and fuel multiplier on the top right-hand corner of your screen. 7 times tyre wear, 2 times fuel consumption. It's going to make for a very interesting race indeed. So then, round 28 of the top 16 superstars. The Nations Cup race for the North America region. Tristan Bayless will lead the field over the line, and in 20 laps we'll be crowning a winner, and we'll be one step closer to finding out who our North America region champion will be. Field getting ready, warming up their tyres. The start line in front of them. They put the hammer down, they shift down a cog, and they get going. So Tristan Bayless then leads the field over the line, and as they head down towards the first corner, a bit of weaving there in the background as they come in towards turn 1. Everybody taking it very carefully through there, and I'm not surprised Bayless a little bit slidey on the exit. Is that going to compromise his run coming through the tunnel and into the chicane? Shouldn't see any moves being made, at least in the first few corners, as the drivers just get a bit of heat into their tyres. But in the latter half of this first lap, that's where things might get interesting. But I'm just looking in the background there. P3, Andrew Brooks coming under a bit of pressure here from Mark Pennell.
At the moment, yeah, it seems that way. Brooks with a slow start and not able to get a good run through there, and Pennell's going to take advantage of that. Go right up the inside of that GTR there. He gets forced out wide, loses 2 places there. So I think Brooks there got caught on the slippery stuff on exit, and both Mark Pennell and Danny Solis go through up into 3rd and 4th respectively. An uncharacteristic start there for Brooks, going backwards.
Here comes Danny Solis down the inside of Mark Pennell into the right-hander. Then that's going to be Bray. Aston Martin versus Aston Martin. Solis is going to try and haul it around the outside and makes it stick. Brilliant driving there from Danny Solis. That is fantastic. Whilst they're squabbling, it's allowing Brooks to come back into the foray as well, going down in towards the left-hander. So already a prominent gap being brought out there by Bayless and Heck in the front of this race. It's a trio of drivers now squabbling for the final position on the podium, with Solis, the driver who has got the advantage as things stand as we come to the end of lap 1.
How many times have we seen this fast-starting Danny Solis working his way back through the field after maybe not his best qualifying session, but now he's got his job to do to try and catch these guys in 1st and 2nd, pulling away a little bit from Mark Pennell behind, so that'll be good for him. But there will be a draft all the way down the main straight, of course, and he'll be just checking his mirrors, double checking them now to come up to the braking zone to make sure he's got enough room. Meanwhile, Bayless and Heck, they're together at the front of the field. Heck opting for the McLaren. We've seen a couple of people try the McLaren and the mid-engine car around here. It seems to work out okay, actually. It's been a bit of a Aston Martin and a Supra loving so far, but good to see a McLaren in there as well.
It does make a difference, does it? You can see a lot of hard tyre runners coming into the pit lane at the end of the first lap. They only have to run them for a minimum of 1 lap, so they'll want to get off of those as soon as they possibly can. The likes of Powder, Hayward, Parker and Grove coming into the pit lane, going onto the medium tyres. They'll be running those, presumably, we think, until the end of the race, if that's the status quo like we've seen in other regions' races. Now, Robbie Head, good to see him fighting up the sharp end of the field, actually. He's had a difficult couple of rounds. Bit off colour the last couple of weekends that we've seen him, but fighting at the sharp end here, it might be a car and track combination, something that's working better for him. Maybe he's just had a bit of a chance to reset, because there's that thing called a snowball effect, isn't there, where if you just get yourself into a bit of a downward rut, your qualifying is bad perhaps, it can just get worse and worse and worse as the event goes on.
I think both him and Bayless really, as Bayless now having to maybe start thinking about defending from Robbie behind, and both these guys, I think Bayless' last good performance that we saw witness was probably back at Tokyo when he won with Porsche in the Manufacturers Series. Now actually starting to come back alive again here in the Nations Cup, round 28. You would have hoped he would, for his sake, maybe come alive a bit earlier on, not in the last couple of races, but still out there looking fast right now, which is important for him, and able to hold off Robbie Heck, even with the draft. Heck is starting to gain though, and it's getting to the point where I think it might be close enough to have a move, maybe in a lap's time or so with that slipstream.
All the other hard tyre runners coming into the pit lane at the end of lap 3. Then here is Andrew Brooks in 3rd position, now ahead of Danny Solis. Mark Pennell also there and thereabouts. Going in towards this chicane, looks like Solis is going to think about putting a move here on Andrew Brooks. Into the corner we go. Not quite close enough to mount a challenge at the moment, but Solis definitely looking very fast indeed. Let's see whether he's going to be able to keep this up. Mark Pennell also in touching distance there in the background. Just in the forefront of your shot there, you can see Robbie Heck still putting pressure on Tristan Bayless. So there is Robbie Heck putting that pressure on Tristan Bayless, coming down this back straight as we head in towards the S-bend. It's downhill really going into there, whereas it's uphill on the forwards layout of this circuit. This is the number 2 layout, so the reverse layout essentially, and does make it a bit of a different challenge for these drivers.
Trying to get your head around it being reversed there, Brooks. I could hear it in real
I
time.
am, yeah, I know.
Wait a minute, this is different.
Hear the cogs whirring away. I'm like, hang on a minute, let's go right instead of left. What's going on here?
Almost drowned out a little bit by the Aston Martins and the Macca in the background, but this is where Heck needs to get a little bit closer. He needs to sort of set up this pass at the end of the straight. This is what you're doing when you're racing someone in front and you know, well, I'm a bit quicker, let's set it up so when I get to the point where I'm quickest, I'm going to be close enough to make a move. And right now, about half a second or so isn't going to be enough, I don't think, to be able to draft onto the back of that Aston Martin, because that Aston, as it always has been, is fairly quick in a straight line. You expect it. V12 at the front of it, just dragging it along down the straight. This McLaren from memory is a V8, I think. Someone in the comments is probably going to tell me I'm wrong. But down the straight, the Aston Martin definitely has a leg. Whereas I think this McLaren has a little bit of an advantage just on rotation, corner entry. It's a bit quicker getting into the corner.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys as well in the comment section. Who do you think is going to be in with a chance of winning this race? Do you think it's Tristan Bayless or Robbie Head? Do you think it's perhaps one of the drivers who's battling for the podium a little bit further down? Just speaking of that, I'm looking at the timing screen there, and it looks like we've lost Danny Solis there. Presumably some kind of a technical issue has compromised him. That is disappointing there for Solis. I mean, he was running really well, actually, and as you said, Jimmy, fighting his way through after a tricky day qualifying and now out of this race.
This is, we say this, it's sim racing. We have our own technical issues as well. It's almost like, you've busted a suspension component or the fuel system's broken. We have the internet, so hopefully we'll see Danny again soon. But meanwhile, we'll go back to Brooks and Penel. Brooks now, I think, he won't be too unhappy with that because he's inherited third place now, hasn't he?
Yeah, nice for some, isn't it? That Nissan Gtr doing a good job there in third position. And bit of a left field choice that, really, because we've seen a couple of those up and down the field, but seems to be quite competitive in this form as things stand. So we've actually got three different manufacturers fighting inside the top three, and given these drivers, unlike in the manufacturer series, have got free choice of car, it's nice to see that.
It's a great choice, I think. I think it's probably the best choice that's been made in the grid, if you ask me, Brooks.
No bias there at all from Jimmy Broadbent.
That's Jimmy, no bias Broadbent, what they call me. Anyway, Heck is close enough. Heck, you say, he goes up the inside. Tristan Bayless, that's what I was talking about. Just got a little bit closer at the end of the straight, got in the draft and needed no invitation to take the position. But now, Bayless is going to try and come back at him coming into the chicane. Now, this is not usually a passing place. Will Bayless pull out of it? He does. He thinks better. This is the thing. You either pull out of it, have a massive crash, or you'll baptise both while and somehow make it work.
Yeah, you've got to know when to pull out. That's the important thing there. And Tristan Bayless doing a good job, but I think there was contact between Bayless and Robbie Head, so the commentators curse alive and well, because just as I said, Bayless was doing a good job. Looks like there was a collision between the two going into that hairpin. The upshot is that Bayless gets a 2-second penalty going through that left-hander, and that is really going to put the back burner on his race now. So, well, oh, dearie me, I'd love to see a replay of that, because we just sort of caught it there, and it didn't look like from the camera angle whether there was too much contact. It might have been a lag issue or something along the lines of that, bit of latency going on there, but either way, now Robbie Head is going to inherit this lead before long.
It's a real shame that is. We've had a few races recently where sort of penalties have dictated who's leading or whatever. I don't think the race is over by any means, because look who's in the background in Godzilla there, coming up behind in the GTR, looking very quick indeed. But for Tristan Bayless, that's going to be alright. That's going to be a kick in the never region, that is, for him, because it has a really good strong start. He started on pole position. Now he's got to serve 2 seconds in a place that's going to be probably the most horrible place to serve it, right at the start of the main straight. He might even lose third as well here to Penel coming up behind in the Aston Martin. Yeah, I think Penel's going to drive by. There he goes. So Bayless from first to fourth.
Those 2 seconds would have felt like a fortnight there for Tristan Bayless, and that is going to really kick him in the teeth, as you said, Jimmy, down into P4. The advantage is that he's got a bit of a carrot dangled in front of him now, with Penel not being too far up the road, but he's going to have to really try and put his foot to the floor, find his way back through. Coming in towards the chicane we go once more. Just looking a little bit further down the order, Powder and Hayward, who made those pit stops, doing a good job there of keeping consistent lap times down in P6 and P7, running very close to one another. They're about 6 seconds rather, I should say, off the back of Dan Mitchell, who is in P5. But keep an eye out for them, see whether that gap does come down as they're on the fresher rubber. There are the drivers that I was just referring to, Kevin Pounder, Randall Hayward. Rayner there has not made a pit stop, so out of position is the Canadian, who is in P8. But that's going to be an interesting kettle of fish to see whether they can make more progress up through the field as they've got a bit of clear air. Maybe they can work together and try and close that gap down.
Here's someone with probably a little bit of a chip on his shoulder now after that penalty, just kicking up the grass and exit. I've seen a couple of drivers do that down there, just taking the exit grass, so to speak, as the line. Problem is, if you hook that a bit too much, you find yourself getting launched into the barrier on the inside, which has happened before as well. So I'm sure Tristan will be very much aware of that. Probably happened to him in practice as well. But he's now up behind Mark Pennell. This will be probably an easy pass down the straight, I think. I'm not sure Mark will fight it too much, given that even with a penalty, Tristan's now right back on his rear bumper again. And to be honest, he's not falling back too much. Tristan, I think Tristan's actually starting to gain again on these guys ahead. So Tristan Bayless is going to go for this. Meanwhile, the lead is going to change hands as well as Andrew Brooks, I think, looks up the inside of Robbie Head. There he is in the GTR. Up the inside goes the GTR with Andrew Brooks at the wheel. Sits on the apex, doesn't allow Heck to come back at him. And now he'll have the lead coming into the chicane. Nice pass there by Brooks.
Lovely stuff indeed. Tristan Bayless now ahead in P3 as well. So 1.5 seconds is the gap between this duo that are squabbling. That'll be a welcome sight there for Bayless. Actually, these two do keep duelling amongst one another, because whilst they're battling, they're losing time respective to Bayless, who in theory won't be locked in a battle. So it might give him the opportunity to close down. And we know that Bayless's pace has been very good. Just looking at the lap times last time around, Bayless was 138.491, so 138.5 effectively. Heck and Brooks in front of him were a couple of tenths of a second faster. So I'll be keen to keep an eye on that and see whether that gap does increase. But look at Brooks now, putting the foot to the floor, putting on a bit of a gap there to Robbie Heck here.
At the moment he is, and this is going to be good for Brooks. He needs to do this too. How did Brooks qualify? Because this seems to happen, right? Brooks just qualifies somewhere in the grid, down in 4th, 5th position or something like that, and then just a couple of laps later, he's leading by a second. What? Stop this. He
qualified third on the grid actually for this one, so better than we have seen him do in previous events. But yeah, nonetheless, I think like you say, kind of makes a bit of hard work for himself by qualifying perhaps a bit further down. But maybe he's not a qualifier and maybe he's more of a racer. That does happen. I mean, you always allude to that, don't you, Jimmy? That you're more of a racer than a qualifier.
The problem is I'm neither, so I just turn up. But Brooks luckily a lot better in the racing in the quali. Here is Mark Pennell and Bayless. Of course, we've had Heck come into the pit lane now for his medium compounded tyre, so that's going to be an interesting shout. Whether he's going to try and undercut Brooks on the way back, that of course allows Tristan Bayless to retake second place and Mark Pennell to follow him through. And does Tristan, now that he's through, does he have the pace to catch up to Brooks again? Because I think Brooks was catching both of them before that penalty.
Nice to see Mark Pennell doing very well, actually fighting up the sharper end of the field again. We used to seeing him at our World Tour events over the last couple of years or so, and has had rotten luck there, much like Andrew Brooks, actually, come to think of it. But nice to see him fighting at the sharp end of these top 16 Superstars races. As you said, Jimmy, Robbie Head coming into the pit lane there. 3.1 seconds the gap he's got to Dan Mitchell in front of him. So that's a nice bit of clear air that he can use to his advantage on this outlap. Try and put his foot to the floor, try and decrease that gap down, set some clean, clear lap times in that clear air, and try and get that undercut working nicely. And all the while the likes of Bayless and Pennell are scrapping. That's going to definitely secure him second position, you would imagine, but it's all down to what Andrew Brooks can do, whether he is going to be able to set some fast lap times on very old rubber now at the start of lap 8.
Well, yeah, but Brooks does that though, doesn't he? Just he's happy out on his own. You give him a free track, he'll go and he'll lap faster than anybody else. I think maybe somewhere where he falls down a little bit is when he has to start fighting for the positions. Luckily, he hasn't got to do that right now. Mark Pennell still hanging on there. Second place is Tristan Bayless. I must admit that I was expecting him to sort of drop off a little bit after Tristan got back by, but he's still there. He's still looking quite feisty. Now, will these guys peel into the pit lane? Let's look. Where's Brooks? Brooks goes by, so does Bayless, so does Pennell. So one more lap on these medium tyres. This could be great for Heck, or it could be bad for Heck, because when it comes to the end of the race, he might find himself in the position where, oh man, my tyres don't work. What do I do?
Well, the gap has come down. It was 3.1 seconds out as he came out of the pit lane. It's now down to 2.2 to Dan Mitchell in front. Rainey coming into the pit lane, the one of 5 Canadians we've got actually up and down the grid. There is Robbie Head. There is the clear air in front of him. Well, I say clear air, it's not going to be clear before too long, because you can see, just in the foreground there, Daniel Mitchell, who is getting more and more prominent in his windscreen.
I had an image there of him just like pressing up against the windscreen when you said that.
Like,
really
like full Looney Tunes, as in like Wile E. Coyote sort of thing.
That's how I drive. I've got tiny legs, so I'm like that next to the windscreen. I don't know why I'm doing. You can't even see me, but yeah, it's that's how it is. Here is Heck though, and Heck will be. This is a time for Heck to hot lap. I mean, you might remember It's not quite the same deal, but back in Hungary, I think it was 98, I want to say, with the infamous qualifying stint of Michael Schumacher. This is sort of that right now. When you're pitting in early for the tyres, you have to make every lap count for that undercut, because you have an advantage your opponents don't. You have a bit of clear air. That means it's all down to you. And Robbie right now absolutely wringing the neck of that 650S McLaren, but is it going to be enough to take the lead from Brooks when the pit stops come around?
Coming down through into the left and then the right-hander on towards the start-finish straight. They're going to kick left before they go on to that start-finish straight. It's a corner that's not really a corner. Now Brooks comes into the pit lane then, so onto the medium tyres he goes. Bayless and Pinel also following suit. Now where is Robbie Head going to emerge? This is the crucial question as he comes over the timeline. There in the forefront of his shot is Andrew Brooks, so the undercut hasn't worked to get the race lead. He is going to hold on though to a de facto second position because of course Daniel Mitchell, who is leading this race, has not made that pit stop, so this is the battle for the race lead, and Heck of course has got slightly warmer tyres. They'll be up to temperature, whereas Brooks has got to spend a few more corners getting those up to that optimum working range, and that could be the opportunity that Robbie Heck needs here.
It could be at this point. This is it, right up now behind Brooks, and as I said, those tyres are going to be cold, but that's really there. That is the place to make the pass. If you do it on the first lap and then sort of try and pull away down the hill. I'm just thinking what Heck now has to do to get by Brooks. If he can stay with him for his middle sector and get up behind him down the straight, he might be able to kind of slip one by down towards T1. But the problem is now that Brooks' tyres are going to be upper temperature, it's going to be on a fresher compounder tyre. The car's going to feel nicer than that of Robbie Heck behind him. So this might be the time where Brooks starts to pull away. But of course, someone else in the equation is Mitchell in first stage, yet to pit. He's in no obligation to get out of the way. He can defend his line as much as he wants, and that might push Brooks back into Heck.
Yeah, let's see what's going to happen then. Here is Mitchell going to come into the pit lane, then going to kink it into this final series of corners, and this of course is costing Brooks time. All the while he's stuck behind the slower Daniel Mitchell. So coming through onto the start-finish straight, surely Mitchell is going to come into the pit lane then. They're going to click it left. Does he come in? Yes, indeed he does. So that releases Brooks with that clear air in front of him. Now he's got to put the hammer down, but of course Heck has got the slipstream. He's closer than he has been. So it has been a strategy that's worked to a degree here for Robbie Heck, but is it going to work effectively enough for him to find his way through? He, of course, has got slightly older rubber than Andrew Brooks, so maybe in the closing stages of this stint, that is when things will get a little bit trickier for him, because of course that 7-time tyre wear multiplier is the equivalent to 7 laps over the course of 1, if that makes sense. And well, they'll be a little bit more worn out than Andrew Brooks is, one would imagine. But let's see how things go here.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a tyre saving race now for Heck. When did Brooks pitted right on the money, right on the centre point, didn't he? So he's going to have to come in, presumably with a lap left, bolt on that hard tyre and just do his 1 lap. Heck is going to either have to try and have a long middle stint now, or run a couple more laps on the hard tyre, which would be more detrimental, I think.
Yeah, time will tell. I always want to call him David Mitchell after the comedian that's plays a character in a TV show that I really like. It's not David Mitchell, it's Daniel Mitchell. He's in P4. He's on the hard tyre, so he's gone for a different strategy compared to everybody else. And you can see him there on the harder combat of tyre. Surely it won't be long before he comes under pressure from Mark Pinel. Speaking of Mark Pinel, actually, what's happened to him here? Because he was right on the rear wing of Tristan Bayless at one point, and he's clearly lost a bit of time. Whether he's made a mistake or something, I'm not quite sure. But either way, he's significantly further back. He's 6 seconds or so back of Tristan Bayless.
The possibilities that come into my head, either he got stuck with Mitchell and there was an issue, but I don't think that was that, because you said it's like 5 seconds, so it wasn't quite an issue. There was a penalty, which I think is more likely. Or possibly he took fuel without meaning to in the pit lane, or something like that. We've seen mistakes before in the pits.
Jimmy, many solutions to problems, Broadbent. I like it, thank you. So coming through the first corner then, Pinel released into clip. You can intro it on your next video. It's an effective solution to a problem that should never have been created in the first place. Anyway, back to the racing. Here's Haywood putting pressure onto Kevin Pounder. This is for P5. Into the chicane we go. This is Aston Martin versus Nissan Gtr. Oh, slip and a slide there coming through into that chicane. Hayward looking on the ragged edge at the moment as he tries to find his way through on his fellow compatriot. This will be interesting to see whether it all works out between them. What do you think Hayward's going to be thinking at the moment here? Do you think they'll try and work together to close the gap down to Pinel, or do you think they'll just be going hell for leather, flat to the floor?
Send it. at this point. You've got to just get it past it, get by as quick as you can. There is no benefit really to working together around here unless the other guy is like a bit quicker than you. What you ideally want if you're following someone is then to be about 2-3 tenths of that faster than you, and then you take the draft and then you gain that time that you wouldn't otherwise have if you were running on your own, if that makes sense. So Hayward now, where he's been closing, he'll be thinking, right, got to get by him, and I'm sure Kevin will not want that, of course. So there'll be a little bit of defence, I imagine, going down towards T1. But thing is now, the places where you pass around here, they're usually just long slipstream zones. It's actually quite difficult to pass anywhere else, and quite difficult to defend as well. You're only allowed one move in a straight, any more than that, and you get a slap from our penalty bot. So anyway, here is Hayward. He's in the draft now. What we expect to see is him pull up to the back of Kevin Pounder, probably look out to the outside. There's lights going on. He says, I'm going to go right here. You don't usually see people indicate on the way by when you're passing somebody, but I think Randall Hayward is nothing but courteous, and through he goes. Kevin gave him that, definitely, didn't he?
Yeah, the only time I ever see indicators when I'm passing somebody is on the motorway normally. That's normally followed by a shaking of the fist and some kind of profanity. I don't think there was anything like that between Randall Hayward and Kevin Pounder as they come through into the chicane. So lap 13, we're on out of 20 now. 6.5 laps remain here in round 28 of the Nations Cup. Looks like Andrew Brooks has just been able to pull out a gap to Robbie Head there, now at 8 tenths of a second. So clearly those tyres working very nicely underneath the Canadian at the moment. And as you said, Jimmy, once he's got a bit of clear air, he's just able to create an advantage and drive his own race. Once he's under not much pressure at all, he just looks much more comfortable, and he's able to set consistent sector and indeed lap times to pull out that gap.
It's just what he likes doing, likes being out front. We all do, really. There's no greater feeling than being out front and unchallenged, essentially. It's just good for your head, gets your mind down, you get your lap times in and put away slowly as he is now. It's a second. Heck isn't slow, though, this is the thing. And any mistake from Brooks is going to be met with, McLaren, hello, it's me. Same applies though for Heck, because behind him Tristan Bayless has pulled back up again, putting out some of that gap that he lost due to the penalty. Take 2 seconds of his time and he was right there.
Yeah, let's see what happens here then between Tristan Bailey, see whether he can continue closing that gap down. This is what we're used to seeing in these races, by the way. If you're a bit worried that it's getting a bit quiet and there's not much action happening on track, then keep an eye out until the end of this race, because that's when it will surely pick up again as these strategies come into their own and see what is going to happen. There is Tristan Bayless putting that pressure, or trying to put that pressure to close down Heck into the chicane. This is for P2 in the race. Just looking a little bit further down the order, Hayward versus Heck still ongoing, 10th of a second separating those two drivers. Otherwise, everybody relatively spread out amongst one another. There is Pounder, with Hayward now in front in P5. Coming through the chicane we go, in towards the hairpin. Is either one going to be able to pull away? That is the question that's on everybody's lips. Or is it going to be a case of they're just going to be battling for P5 and that's as good as they can do? It's interesting though, because if you look at the gaps in qualifying, Jimmy, perhaps those who aren't so familiar to racing will just explain this very quickly. If you look at the gaps in qualifying, they're only a few tenths of a second. Why do these gaps get so much more pronounced during a race? Why do we see 7 seconds between first and sixth if the gap was only 3 or 4 tenths of a second during quali?
I always say it's for a lot of people it's easy to go out there and do one very fast lap. It's very hard to then do 20 very fast laps in a row, especially when you're fighting with other people around you as well, because that's also a big factor. Is when you're fighting with someone, you're always losing time. I mean, on that qualifying lap, you're not trying to defend from a guy sending it up the inside, are you? Speaking of which, I think we're going to see a bit of that here. Here's Tristan Bayless on the back of Robbie Head. Maybe starting to slow down a bit in that McLaren. There goes Bayless through. He goes then up to second place, and he is gaining on everybody right now. So that was actually he closed down about 7 tenths of a second there on that lap, and now he's in pursuit of Andrew Brooks. So Bayless is actually, I think, someone that Brooks needs to really be looking out for. He's on a charge right now.
Fastest lap overall last time around there for Tristan Bayless as well, just to compound that. 137.5 compared to Andrew Brooks's 137.7. So this is getting interesting now between these two drivers. Let's see what is going to happen. Has Bayless got something in the locker ready to unleash in the closing 5 laps of this race? Is he going to be able to close down the gap to the Canadian? And are we going to see the return of Tristan Bayless to the top step of the podium? We'd love to see that. We love all of these drivers that are competing here, but what we love most of all is a nice squabble to the finish.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of those so far, haven't we? Neck and neck to the finish. I'm sure we'll probably see the same here as well if we ask nicely. So, what does Bayless do from here? He's got 2.4 seconds to Brooks. He's lost a bit of time there. I always get the impression with Andrew Brooks that he's always driving at 90% until he has to drive at 100%. Then he turns it up. And that's all what happened here is that he goes, oh man, you know, Bayless is pretty quick that lap. Tristan was pretty quick. Oh, I better just go a bit quicker then.
Yeah, he just sort of...
6 attempts he's got there.
Well, he pushes a button, doesn't he, or something along the lines of that. He just sort of seems to push it. Oh, there we go, there's the extra 10%, bang, and just darts in a fast one, or something along the lines of that. And that gap now stabilising at 2.5 seconds. Here comes Heck. Is he coming into the pits? He certainly is. Now, is he going onto the hard tyre here? Oh. He is. For the last 4 laps of the race. Bold call.
Yeah,
maybe okay. Maybe that's what the downfall of the McLaren. Maybe it's just wearing its tyres out a bit too soon compared to the front engine cars.
We've always heard that the rear engine cars, the mid engine cars I should say, are a bit more prone to eating tyres than the others, so maybe that's what the said, that's a trade-off. You've got a bit more speed, a bit more rotation in the corners, but unfortunately you haven't quite got the rest of that. You haven't quite got the rest of the package there, so unfortunately for Heck, he'll now be in the clutches of Randall Hayward behind. Hayward's one to watch out for too. He's behind this little group and he's gaining 2. So Heck is now going to go to the end on these hard compounder tyres. Now owes a stop. I'm fairly sure. Have Hayward and Pounder used the hard compounder tyre so far?
Let me just check the timing screens. Hayward and Pounder, they have used the hard compounder tyre because they started on the hard compounder tyre.
In which case then that's what Heck now needs to be looking at. He needs to be looking back towards these guys as Randall makes, I was going to say short work, but Heck does not give it to him easy. There's a little bit of side-to-side contact there as they both fight for the same space of tarmac, and Randall comes out on top. Heck's got the better run though, but he won't have the tyre to go round the outside here. He's going to have to surely yield to Randall on the inside. The Canadian looks there, he's still there. Heck is still trying to make this work on that hard compounder tyre. Goes round the outside using the extra exit speed he'll take from that. He's still got the outside line. He's going to have to pull off surely. No, that's still side by side. If they come down to this left-hander, surely now Mark has it. I keep saying this. There you go. Oh! Mark goes a little bit sideways and then just a little bit of contact. Heck goes back through. So I think there may be a little bit of argy-bargy, as commentator will once say. Look in the background, Hayward now. He's now got the draft because these guys are slow off the corner. He's going to pull by both of them down the straight. Surely 4 cars in the same picture.
This is unbelievable stuff. I counted 7 corners that they were side by side between one another. Here comes Pounder trying to send it down the inside. Look at the trio of cars as we go 3 wide into turn 1. Heck on the inside. Here comes Pounder on the inside as well. Looks like Hayward is going to get shuffled out to dry on the curb. He does. Randall versus Pounder side by side. Contact with Randall into the wall. Out of T1. Randall goes into the wall. Contact with Kevin Pounder at the start of lap 17. And that's the Canadians' race over and done with. Well, it was always going to be tricky with that many cars squabbling for position, and maybe they should have been a bit more patient. It's easy to be a bit more circumspect after looking back at that, but still, that was a great squabble between them. Disappointment, though, for Mark Randall ending up in the barrier at the end of that one.
This reminds me of old BTCC days, that does. You have a big fight and someone ends up in the barrier, which is usually how things go in that series. But, yeah, I mean, Randall just wrong place, wrong time. The 4 cars go into 1 there, all squabbling hard. I thought that Hayward got given the short straw there as he was just hung out to dry on the exit, but it was Randall and Pounder. I think maybe they just sort of both, you have that time sometimes when you're racing where you both sort of just drift to the same bit of tarmac, and it just, yeah, I'd like to see it again, but I feel like it was a racing incident.
It does happen, doesn't it, from time to time. I wonder what Randall's reaction to that will be compared to Kevin Pounder. He'll say, I had nowhere to go, Kevin Pounder, and then he'll say that the likes of Randall, for example, just chops across his nose. It does happen, cars on the ragged edge, and they always say that, don't they, when they're right on the edge of adhesion, these cars, you could just sort of flick them and they would spin round because they're just running on that edge of the tyre grip. Meanwhile, let's come back to that as I try and get the words out. Here comes Heck versus Pounder down into T1. Side by side we go. Heck on the inside. Pounder is on the outside here. It's McLaren versus Aston Martin. There's a slide on the exit from Pounder. That's going to allow Hayward to come into the party then. So 3 cars now squabbling for position as we come down in towards the chicane. Pounder is in the middle of this sandwich at the moment. He's got to keep his eye on his mirrors and trying to attack the driver in front. Heck holds on to 3rd position as they come through that chicane there. Bit of a slide midway through the corner as well for Hayward. Is that going to allow an opportunity out of this corner here for Hayward to find his way past? It's not. Powder gets a great run out, sends it down the inside of Robbie Head then, and finds his way through into third place, but he's wide on exit. Does Heck have anything left to try and attack back? This is brilliant driving from Heck. Don't forget, of course, he's on the hard compound of tyre here compared to Pounder and Hayward, who are on the medium tyres, but they're a bit old, of course. But this is a great squabble for position. Pounder, as it stands at the moment, sits in P3.
Yeah, that really does. I mean, that's how things go. And the thing is, the reason why Robbie Heck is attacking so hard is because this is for the podium. Now, these are the guys who are going to be fighting to the end. He's going to try to lunge up the inside again. Reminder, Heck's on that hard compound of tyre and making things work. He takes the pace back from Kevin Pounder. He is not going down without a fight, and that's allowed Randall Hayward to walk through the open door that Heck left, and there you go. So just like that, Kevin Pounder now back down to 5th. Heck is in 3rd. Hayward in 4th, and now we're going to have this draft fest all the way down to T1 all over again, and we have about 2 laps or 2.5 laps almost to settle this now. There is Heck, there is Hayward, there is Pounder. What's that McLaren like in a straight line with no draft? Let's find out as we come past the start-finish line to start lap 19 and 20. Hayward looks to the outside, tries to sell him a dummy, pulls to the inside, then pushing to the inside there. A little bit of a squeeze from Heck. Hayward's going to have the corner, but he's going to be slow on exit. This might allow Pounder to get both of them. He does, there you go. The cut back from Pounder, that worked out, but now it's going to be a drag race down to the chicane.
This is brilliant stuff. Pounder on the inside, Hayward on the outside. Surely Hayward is going to have to relinquish that position. If they go in 2x2, that's a one-way ticket to the barrier. Pounder does get ahead of Randall Hayward. This is cracking racing right at the very end. I said it might be a bit stagnant in the middle and it would come alive at the end, and that is exactly what it's done. This is the battle for the final position on the podium. Heck is now at the back of this trio of drivers that are battling for this final position on the podium, and this is a tricky place for him to be here, Jimmy, because if it stays behind them for too long, he needs to be constantly attacking them at every opportunity. Otherwise, I fear he may lose touch on those hard tyres.
Yeah, pretty much. He needs to always be in there, as you're saying. As soon as they have a little bit of a gap, that's going to be them done and dusted and gone. So, Heck now, he needs to send it up here already, or does he? This is what he wants. He needs Hayward fighting Pounder, because that will slow them both up and he can sort of steer with them. Hayward there actually taking more of a defensive line when he didn't really need to there. And then sideways on exit. This is Heck's chance to try and get by. This is bad and good for Heck because it's slowing him down. Look who's getting away, Kevin Pounder. He's going to get away from this little trio. They're going to be squabbling like this. Down the hill now, down this one more time. Brooks comes into the pit stop for his last stop on that hard compounded tyre. Bayless does the same. These guys are going to come out some way behind them. See Heck, they have a little bit of contact with the back of Hayward and the 1 second penalty.
Oh dear, for Robbie Head. Oh, we hate to see that every race is decided by penalties. It robs us of a good battle, and that is going to mean as we come on to the start of the final lap, you can see the white flag being waved there. Here comes Hayward, sends it as a late lunge down the inside of Kevin Pounder. Does he make it through as they come through on corner exit? No, not quite, but they're running side by side as they come through the tunnel. Hayward has to dart back into the slipstream there. It was going to always be an opportunist move there from Hayward versus Pounder, and he just has to hold on. Now, where is he going to be thinking about sending it through here, Jimmy? He's clearly wanting to make a move on this last lap.
There might be a chance up here. This left-hander up the hill, if he's aggressive enough. He's not quite close enough. Heck is going to go for it, though. He's trying to distract them, trying to slow them down, trying to negate his 1 second penalty, which unfortunately probably is not going to work. But there goes the penalty. So Heck now out of this little race. And it comes down to 2, Kevin Pounder and Randall Hayward. And Hayward needs to either set it up out of the S's or going down the pit straight.
Meanwhile, out in front, Andrew Brooks and Tristan Bayless clear off, and they are in a very good position as they come through into the final sector of the lap. Keep an eye out on that because they'll be coming to cross the line very shortly indeed. But Hayward versus Pounder, sells him a dummy there, does Randall Hayward, tries to go to the inside, switches to the outside very late, but Pounder's wise to it. He holds the line, he holds firm. A final series of corners now. Pounder is going to do everything he can, try every trick in the book to hold off the charge here of Randall Hayward. We're about to come over the line for the race win very shortly with Andrew Brooks, but we'll keep an eye on this battle. A great win for Brooks. The Canadian takes another victory in the Nations Cup ahead of Tristan Bayless for P2, but P3 is where we're all keeping an eye on between them and Kevin Pounder. Who's going to get the drag to the line between Pounder and Hayward? Side by side we go, and the line's very far up. Pounder versus Hayward. Who's going to get it? I think it was Kevin Pounder by 17 thousandths of a second to the line for P3 in round 28 of the Nations Cup. Heck comes home P5, a disconsolate P5 at that, ahead of Mitchell, Parker and Mark Pinnell, who had a very tricky end to that race, down in P8 at the checkered flag. But what an exciting finish, and what another brilliant display of driving from this man here, Andrew Brooks.
Yeah, Brooks there just showing you why he's the one to beat in this region and why he has been for a very long time. Hayward nearly had it on the line. We've seen people make that work. I think he maybe just timed his run a little bit too early. You want to be in the draft for as long as possible, not give the guy behind you a chance to fight it out. A big shame about Robbie Head too. That penalty at the end, you could have been in the mix, but 5th place, not bad for him. Tristan Bayless, even with a penalty, 2nd place. I think that's one of his best results so far.
Yeah, very, very welcome result that will be there for Tristan Bayless. Great guy he is, and good to see him fighting up the sharp end of the grid. Fastest lap to boot there as well for Bayless in P2. As we said, great drive though from Andrew Brooks to take another victory in the Nations Cup. Pounder finishing P3 ahead of Hayward, Heck, Mitchell down in 6th place, Parker and Pinnell. Well, Pinnell's P8 doesn't exactly tell the full story as we saw in that one. He'll be disappointed with that finish at the end. Work to do for him next time out ahead of Leslie and Rayner completing the top 10. Watson, Lynch, Stewart, Grove, Pickram, and then Danny Solis, of course, with those technical troubles, not making the checkered flag in 16th position. What a brilliant race we've had then in the Nations Cup. I hope the Manufacturer Series is just as exciting.
So this is the place where I will try to overtake. Here, you see?
Well, it helps if I do that. Oh no!
Come on,
cheeky
the
boy. Well, hello guys, welcome back to the Gran Turismo studio. I am joined today by a very special guest. This is Lucas Ordonez, of course, GT Academy champ, Super GT driver, LMP1 driver, big list.
Hi Jimmy, how you doing? Yeah, it's great to see you. Long time not seen.
It has been a long time. And today, Lucas is going to be using his vast experience as a racing driver to teach us the best places to overtake here at Suzuka, where our Manufacturers' Cup is being held.
Well, my first race in Japan was in 2013 and it was a official test here. And then I raced full season in Japan in 2014, and then I did Formula 3 and Super GT 500 in 2015. So yeah, Suzuka is one of my favorite tracks in the world for sure.
Well, that's okay then, because I've done none of that. I've played some simulators, so I think you win. Where are you looking to overtake around here? Because it's not an easy track to overtake at, is it?
Yeah, Suzuka is really, well known as a very difficult overtaking track. The most interesting place for overtaking are definitely the hairpin and the chicane.
So Lucas, we're just going to set up now for the hairpin pass. So getting a good run out of Dunlop is important, but not as important as getting the run out of a second Degner though, because you've got to make sure you've got the overspeed.
Exactly, here this is really important to brake early, but have a good run through the exit curve. Use the draft of your rival and then dive into the inside.
So I see you there. Don't want to give you the room.
Oh, that was tight.
That was a Super GT pass, man.
With a little door-to-door, right?
So I'm gonna give, I'm gonna come back at you now. I'm gonna fight you now to the end of the lap. Let's race to the line, Lucas.
Okay.
You can show me, Mr. Master Overtaker. Come on, head down. Come on, go. What about getting a good exit out of 130R through here? So I do that. I'm a little bit sluggish through there. I'm going to take my normal racing line, braking. Lucas brakes a little bit later than I do. Chucks it out of the inside, blocks the apex, so I can't come back at him. And that there is just textbook pass there, man.
Yeah, man, it was too easy.
Have you done this before? So that is how to overtake at Suzuka, as taught by Mr. Real Life Racing driver Lucas Ordonez. Lucas, great to see you, mate. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a couple of tips.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure, and hope to see you soon, guys. And let's enjoy Top 16 Superstars.
So, over to the Manufacturer Series then. Group 4 cars at the Suzuka circuit is the order of the day. Racing hard tyres available only for the drivers over the course of 16 laps, which means, Jimmy, one of our favourite situations of racing. No pit stops, a flat-out sprint from start to finish.
They're quite rare in these events, aren't they? It's nice to actually have just a flat-out race to the line. It does mean, of course, that if you have a good BOP around here, then you might be looking a bit happier than others. We've seen Audi be very quick around here recently as well, though we have seen wins both for Honda as well, and also BMW looking quick. So Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, this, I think.
Certainly will be. Let's head over to the grid, shall we, and see what's what. So here then is how the field lines up ahead of the Manufacturers Series race. Group 4 cars, as we said just a few moments ago, to remind you, pole position, Jeffrey Gallen in the Dodge Viper. Quick in Group 3 machinery last weekend. Let's see whether he can do the same here. Robbie Head in the Porsche Cayman lines up in P2. Second row of the grid, that's headed by Andrew Brooks and the very distinctive Citroen GT Group 4 car. Armin Agakard in the Toyota 86 lines up P4. P5 on the grid, Tristan Bayless in the second of the Porsche Caymans. Good performance from him last time in the Nations Cup, with Chris Lynch alongside in the McLaren 650S. See whether that's kind of on its tyres here. Randall Hayward in the BMW M4 down in P7. Difficult qualifying for him. Can he make some progress in the race? Danny Solis will be hoping to at least make the checkered flag in this one, behind the wheel of the Subaru WRX. Parker Leach in the Audi TT Cup down in 9th position, so the Audis are quick but not in qualifying. Kevin Pounder lines up alongside him, completing that top 10. Lim lines up in P11 in the Volkswagen Scirocco. P12 is Richard Castro in the Nissan Gtr. P13 on the grid is Nick McMillan in the Aston V8 Vantage. And P14 on the grid is Mark Pinnell in the Alfa Romeo 4C. Final row of the grid, Santolino in P15 in the Honda NSX. And P16 of DNA Gears in the Toyota GC86 Group 4 car. So that's how the grid lines up. A flat-out sprint from start to finish is what we're expecting here, but as I was just saying a few moments ago there, Jimmy, the Audi's quick in other regions, but not quick in qualifying trim, at least in North America.
I was thinking, what the hell was the Dodge doing there at the front of the Viper? I haven't seen it at all. And then suddenly, there's Jeff Gallen, of course, old big boy Jeff coming out with the Dodge. He's sitting there on pole. So great to see it up there. But yeah, the Audi, really, really fast elsewhere in other regions, especially in the Oceania region. But here, nowhere. Back in the middle of the field.
Let's see what's going to happen then. So coming through in towards this final series of corners we are now. Porsche Cayman in second position of Robbie Head. That's as far up as we've seen a Cayman in Group 4 trim, actually, over the different regions that we've covered here so far. So let's see whether that can be a contender in the at the checkered flag in 16 laps time. So coming down through into the final corner we are then here with Jeffrey Gallen. It's round 28 of the top 16 superstars for the North America region. The penultimate round. Who is going to be claiming the checkered flag in 16 laps time? Are we going to be any closer to crowning a champion in this region as well? Jeffrey Gallen leads the field over the line, tries to break the slipstream immediately. Robbie Head coming under pressure there from Andrew Brooks as we come down in towards the first corner. You can see Brooks is already looking to try and attack against the Porsche in second position, but not able to find his way through as things stand, and there's clearly contact between them because Heck has gone off the track and Brooks has been given a 3-second penalty there. So that is big drama early doors here.
You know what, there's a word we use for that, or a phrase, and that's being sent to the shadow realm. Firmly there, Heck was just completely fired off at T1 and now is having to battle with Hayward in the middle sector. So he's gone from starting second place down to 6th already. He's not through the first sector yet. Brooks, of course, with that 3-second penalty, that's really going to hamper his race. It'll be hard to see him recover from that, but if anyone can do it, it'll be Andrew Brooks. But of course, our automatic penalty system there just saying, yep, Andrew, you can't do that, mate. Slap around the face, there's 3 seconds, that's your race done.
So then coming through into the data as they go for the first time. Heck now having to recover after that incident there. You can see just in the background of your shot, looks like Kevin Pounder there, looking to try and make a few moves. Here comes Danny Solis, having to defend from Parker Leach in the Audi. He's trying to find his way through. There is Kevin Pounder just at the back of this quintet of drivers who are battling for position. Now, Brooks with that 3-second penalty. The penalty zone is just coming through the spoon curve. Coming back to that in a few moments because Parker Leach is again trying to attack against Solis, not able to find his way through. But as I was saying, that penalty zone is just about to be served there for Andrew Brooks. He's going to lose 3 seconds in terms of the time penalty, but also he'll have lost momentum and speed as a result of that penalty, so he may lose a few more positions. Let's see what happens here for Andrew Brooks. He goes to the other cars go through the order. Got to be careful here when he comes back into vision as well, and he's going to drop right down the order. Oh dear, Andrew Brooks from second position down into P9.
Big shame for Brooks, man. This is what happens in the first lap. If you have that problem and you just get steamrolled by everyone behind you, especially on the first lap, it's the worst time to have it because everyone's still bunched together. You lose so many places. And you might think, well, he's fast to get back by them again, but you and I both know, Tom, that it's hard to get by people around here. So, yeah, it's not as easy as that. So Bayless there going about as defensive as you can do. I think high-fiving his mechanics down the pit wall there, as close as he was. Lynch there staying on the traditional racing line, and there being no change. Bayless stays up in second place. But you know what that tells me? We saw Heck do the same thing at the start. We saw Tristan do that. That tells you that Porsche is really struggling in a straight line.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the quickest car out there, does it, compared to some other machinery. Now, I think it's a bit more nimble in the corners, is that Porsche, compared to other machinery around it. Lower centre of gravity compared to the likes of that BMW M4 that Hayward is piloting. So that's good for him, but obviously when you come onto the straight, it seems like a bit of a sitting duck. We'll keep an eye on that and see whether it has the legs with the slipstream. Coming in towards the Daytoners now, Heck really on the rear wing of Randall Hayward as we come through into the second of said Daytoners. Underneath the circuit we go. This is, of course, is a figure of 8 layout here at Suzuka, and as you go under that bridge, you go under the run in towards 130R into the hairpin. That's a prime overtaking opportunity. As you'll know if you watch that EMEA region show, Jimmy Broadbent versus Lucas Ordonez, those two squabbling. And these guys squabbling for position here as well. But even coming out of the hairpin there, look at the gap that Hayward has been able to close up. So whether Heck got a poorer exit or not, or whether it's just struggling on traction that came, and I'm not sure. But either way, he's now into the clutches of Solis here.
Yeah, this is something that he won't be wanting. All he wanted is just to try and get back on with it and get back up the field after that start. We know Daniel Solis is fast in this WRX as well, so there might be a chance for him to get back by down the straight. Parker behind as well in that Audi. That's always going to be a threat to everyone. They know how quick that Audi is down the straight, so if and basically everywhere around here. So if you for one moment just get complacent and forget it's there, then he's going to try and foul up the inside again. There's Robbie Head struggling down the straight in that Porsche. Hasn't quite got that straight line speed. The gap opens up to Hayward in front. Daniel Solis on the leash, not quite close enough to make anything of that though. We come on now onto the third lap of the race. Another good overtaking zone down here. You draft all the way down the straight. What does Robbie Head do this time? Oh, a penalty there for Daniel Solis. That is track limits. I can tell you that from watching him go over the chicane. It's so easy to do there. And the thing is, as racing drivers, you're going to try and find the best possible line through it. Even with the penalty, he's not taking it lying down. He's going to try and go inside the Heck. He's got a quarter panel there. You have to make it stick. They're both going to be very slow to see when Heck gets fired out again. Oh, Heck cannot catch a break there. No penalty there for Daniel Solis, but I think at that point maybe Heck had sort of lost the corner, and it would have been a bit of a better idea to let it happen rather than try and squeeze him right to the inside, because I mean it is Danny's duty as the passing driver to get by cleanly and properly, but at some point you have to realise that the guy is there.
Oh dear there for Robbie Heck. His race sadly goes from bad to worse. Now Danny Solis has got this half-second penalty. The likes of Parker Leach and Kevin Pound are very close behind. I wonder how much time that's going to compromise him. Now, Heck versus Brooks. Where does this sound very familiar? Lap 1 of turn 1, is it all over again? I hope not, but I'm intrigued to see what these two are going to be able to do. They've clearly got more pace compared to those around them, at least in qualifying trim, but now they're stuck behind traffic in these cars. And it's a case of if they can find their way through.
Yeah, we're looking in this mirror now and going, not you again. Where have you come from? I don't want to deal with this again. So Danny Solis in front. He's going to be serving a half-second penalty. That'll be just on the way up out of the Spoon curve. So we might see him drop back into the back. Half-second though, it's kind of the equivalent of just going down the straight, mashing the brake, and then getting back on the throttle again. That's sort of the difference you have around there. So let's see what it does here.
Hang on a minute, Jimmy. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. Hayward just fired himself off at the Spoon curve. He's gone right down the order. He was running up inside the top 3, and he's gone down into P10. I just saw it in the forefront of the shot there as he went through. We were watching the likes of Brooks versus Heck through there, but Hayward fired himself off by the looks of things. Whether there was contact, I'm not entirely sure. Whether it was a mistake, but either way, he's now down on the fringes of the top 10, and it's all getting pretty fiery on those fringes of the top 10, with Solis now having to defend here from Lim and trying to attack Andrew Brooks.
Yeah, do you think that it was possibly another scenario of someone just going a little bit wide on the Spoon curve and just picking up the Astro, that rear right tyre? We've seen that a few times so far.
Yeah, it could be. It's not the first time we've seen it. It certainly won't be the last. It's a very common place to do it. You're really trying to use all of the track you can going through those corners, and maybe it was a simple mistake from Hayward. We didn't catch what happened, so we'll reserve too much judgment. Either way, he is now trying to find his way through against the Volkswagen Scirocco of Lim here, but is he going to be able to find his way through? That's the crucial question. It's so much one at a time through these corners that you can't really find something unless you're feeling particularly brave and you've got a lot of confidence in the other driver that's surrounding you. So Hayward is going to have the red mist descended, and he's really going to be trying to find an opportunity to clear this traffic and try to compound his woes and just get a better race underneath him, because otherwise that's going to be a disastrous result for him, considering where he's sitting in the championship.
Well, you think about it this way, right? We have Heck, Brooks, Solis and Hayward, drivers that we tend to see in front of the grid, now just stuck in the mid-pack. So I think whatever happens now, we're going to see a little bit of fireworks. I mean, for someone like Parker Leach, who's now sitting up in 4th place, this is Christmas come early. Oh, there's Hayward. Hello. I mean, so he goes a limb there. He's not going to waste any time. He just pops up Hayward sometimes, but doesn't quite get the run. That's the thing coming out of the hairpin, right? If you get a really good run on the inside, your exit is compromised because you can't use the road because, well, there's a car there. So you have to slow up on exit, and that's why it's just not a matter of putting by. Also, someone else doing well. This guy, Lynch. Look at him. McLaren, he's in 3rd place, he's behind Tristan Bayless. In fact, he's looking like he's a bit quicker than Tristan Bayless, and that'll be a net 2nd position if he can get that done. This is a great race so far for the McLaren driver.
Yeah, brilliant to see there for Chris Lynch. Nice to see him fighting at the sharp end of the field. Good to see the McLaren fighting once again at the sharp end. Quick in Group 3 trim in the last race in Nations Cup. Quick in Group 4 trim here today as well. And now putting pressure onto Tristan Bayless. So that Porsche clearly can fight at the sharp end of the field and clearly can hold its own against the McLaren, at least in a straight line. And he's doing a good job there with Tristan Bayless behind the wheel. Meanwhile, Jeff Gallen, we've hardly mentioned him in this one, in the Dodge Viper. He's 4 seconds clear up the road. He is in a different postcode compared to everybody else here, and that is such a usual sight here for Jeff Gallen. If we hark back to last time in the Manufacturer Series, he again was up the sharp end of the field and fighting for the win, taking the win in the end, and looks like he is on course to have another strong result here today as well.
Man's out there vibing, dude. Down the straight, he's got his AC on, he's got baby metal on at the same time. He's just loving life, going down the straight, absolutely no issues, and just relax. And that is the best place to be when you feel like, you know, I've got the pace of these guys, I'm out front. It's very rarely happened to me, but when it has, you feel like you're on top of the world. There's nothing better than that feeling. And then you realise that you've forgotten a pit stop or something. That happens quite often. But that won't be a problem here though, because no pit stops. Hard tyre all the way to the end.
Of course.
Something I wanted to mention, Tom, you talked about the Macca being fairly quick in group 3 trim. What was the issue in group 3 trim? Tyre wear. Do you reckon that's going to be the same issue here, maybe?
It's possible. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen it. Again, it's a mid-engine car, so the same characteristics. It's just, of course, is a little bit slower. Group 3 versus Group 4. Group 3 cars are very much heavily more based on road cars. Less prominent aerodynamics, a lot more simple of a car, so you can see that's why they look more traditional to their road-going counterparts, whereas Group 4 cars are very much more racing cars, bigger diffusers, bigger wings, more downforce, bigger tyres. Everything about them just screams more grip, essentially. So these cars, they do not wear out their tyres quite as quickly, I would say, but still there is an effect of dirty air when you're following other cars in front as well. So it's a bit of a balance, and again, being a mid-engine car, that may come back to bite him in the backside. Likewise, that Porsche Cayman is also a mid-engine car, so maybe we'll see the similar characteristics there for Tristan Bayless.
Possibly. It's Parker Leach. He's someone that is a bit higher than I think he expected to be in now. I think he started down in P8, P9, wasn't it? So firmly in the midfield, and now he's sitting there quite happy in 4th. But of course, Kevin Pounder behind in that Hyundai. Hyundai's a brand we don't really see much of, Tom, in these races. Occasionally we'll see someone rock it in Group 4, but never really see it in Group 3 at all.
I've been repping for Hyundai since day one, to be honest. It might be something to do with the fact that I do drive one, although not for very much longer, but that's another subject for another day. But Kevin Pounder doing a good job there, putting the pressure on to Parker Leach. So let's see whether he is going to be able to find his way past somebody in the background going wide. I think that was Andrew Brooks from P7. Indeed it was. And his race, again, going from bad to worse, because he now goes down to the fringes of the top 10. So that first corner catching quite a few drivers out. And, well, he was in the middle of Robbie Head there. I wonder whether there was a bit of karma going on, perhaps. We didn't see what happened exactly. Penalty for Armin Agakar. Maybe he had something to do with it.
What's wrong with Brooks? He's really slow through here. I'm talking really, really slow. So slow that Agakar is able to pull up with him. Is there an issue there for Brooks? Some sort of maybe technical issue? Because he's super slow right now. He's sped up a little bit now after we come through the S's, but through there he was in the background 2x2 for the deck there. We don't usually see that. Lim on the inside, Agakar on the outside. Lim, I think, just about coming out of that. Tom Brooks has his hand up.
I did, yeah, only because I saw the side-by-side through the data. I've been waiting for that since we started commentating on the Oceania races, Jimmy. And finally, we see it in North America. They came good. Nice one, lads.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah, I mean, you don't really see moves through there. Usually they end up with, well, someone with a big flashing penalty. But that wasn't
hang on a minute. Well, hang on a minute. Where was the northern accent in there? Where did that come from and why?
I don't know. It comes out sometimes, mate. It's part of my heritage. It's part of my heritage. Anyway, there's terrible accents aside. Brooks not looking fast at the moment. It has to be said. He's looking really quite slow. Maybe struggling a bit of that Citroen. Here's someone who's not struggling. Lynch looking up the inside, maybe to try and make a move. Not quite able to do so. There is Leach behind. The thing is with that McLaren, it doesn't seem to have that little bit of speed at the end of the straight. The Cayman in front seems to be mighty through the medium and fast speed corners, enough so that Lynch is not able to catch up. So it's about the closest they've been so far down the straight. It's 3 tenths of a second. Let's keep an eye on that and let's see what happens to that gap. So Lynch might be close enough for a pass here. He's got the run. The 10th between the two is now door handle to door handle. Tristan Bayless who just lets him by. Lynch goes up the inside. Up to second place, Bayless there, I think just rolling over and letting it happen.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case there, just trying to not hold too much time. Maybe he wants to be the chaser as opposed to the chasee then here for Tristan Bayless, and let's see whether that is a position that helps him out. 5.1 seconds, Jeff Gallen is out in front now in this race, and all the while these guys are squabbling, look who's closing up in the background. Parker Leach, Kevin Pounder, Robbie Head, now Randall Hayward, not too far adrift there either, so at least 3 drivers ready to try and get themselves onto the back of that duo. But this man here, Jeff Gallen, as we're coming up towards the halfway stage in this race, I mean, he's out just for a Sunday afternoon cruise at the moment. He's just in a different league. He's setting consistent lap time, and I'm just looking at those lap times. Last time around, he was a 2:09.2. Compare that to Chris Lynch and Tristan Bayless. They were in the 2:10 flats.
So he's sitting there with his Kazunori Yamauchi podcast, just listening about all the things coming up for GT7. Maybe, you know, he's there just chilling out, relaxing. You love to see this sort of drive because it is like the realization of pace and skill, and it's calm. You know, sometimes you see other drivers when they're driving, they are all over the wheel. Their braking isn't smooth, their inputs aren't smooth. Gallen is just the complete opposite. He's got his incense burning in there too. He's so chilled out.
What kind of picture are you painting of Jeff Gallen? He sounds like he's racing whilst he's sat in the bath or something, with a bit of Sade on the stereo.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the sort of vibe he's got going on right now. He seems so chilled out. I'm sure, from his perspective, he's pushing hard, going as fast as he can. But from us, he just looks like he's in a complete class of his own.
People are going to be going on to their podcast apps now and trying to find the Kazunori Yamauchi podcast that doesn't exist as well, looking for information about 7.
Well, now there's a reason for one to exist.
Idea. Anyway, back to the racing and back to what's happening out on track. Chris Lynch coming under pressure from Tristan Bayless, coming under pressure from Parker Leach, coming under pressure from Kevin Pounder, and coming under pressure from Robbie Head. So, this is an interesting train of cars that are all squabbling for position. Look in the background there, Danny Solis, who's had a tricky race, Andrew Brooks, even more so, down in P8 and P9. So this is getting interesting here in the mid-stages of this one, and it's a case of if they can find their way past, and if they can, are they going to be able to close the gap down, or is second position going to be as good as they can get? I wonder, because of course Jeff Gallen has just been so consistently much quicker than everybody else. But either way, a lot to be gained here for these drivers, the likes of Robbie Heck and Kevin Pounder, and potentially Randall Hayward if he can close up the gap here as well. But this is nice to see them all running so close to one another, because clearly there's a good amount of pace underneath all of these drivers, and that in turn makes very close and exciting racing for us here.
Well, think about it this way. If you... Oh, hello! Heck goes for an absolute lunge on Kevin Pounder. That was rude, Robbie. Up the inside he goes, and apparently, well, there you go. It was rude, but it was fair. And up he goes, up into 5th place. And I don't think Kevin was expecting that. What's going on there? And I wouldn't be surprised if we see an equally aggressive move now coming into the spoon, because there's nothing you hate more than the driver than to be just done dirty like that. And Robbie Heck, that was a very opportunistic, very late lunge there. Robin's racing, as we say, and that was definitely racing. So Heck now has got past Kevin Pounder and now looking to try and get up onto the back of Parker Leach. And bear in mind, if you have forgotten or you, like me, and have terrible short-term memory, Robbie Head started this race in second place. So he was really up there, but at the moment, you know, he's now trying to fight back.
It certainly is, and let's see whether Robbie Head can do that quick in qualifying, of course. And I'm just looking at the timing screens. He qualified, of course, 3 positions higher than he is now. So let's see whether he can get himself elevated onto the podium where he probably feels he rightfully belongs, because he's had a couple of incidents that haven't really been his fault. He's been shuffled out wide at that first corner more times. So he can probably tell you what the local menu is on the cafe near that first turn. But anyway, let's see whether he can make some progress through the field once more. Just looking a little bit further down the order, Arman Aga Khan, not really featuring too much in this race compared to last weekend when we were commentating on the North America region. He was right consistently up the sharp end of the grid. He's down in P12 here, so I wonder whether that Toyota is just not perhaps as quick around the Suzuka circuit as perhaps it was at the Blue Moon Bay Speedway.
Perhaps, you know, different circuits suit different cars, and that's always an ongoing thing around here. If you have a car that's an absolute weapon in the straight line, you're going to have a good time at Monza, aren't you? But not maybe a good time at a track like Suzuka, or here at Suzuka, where there's only really a couple of straights, and a lot of it is down to sort of mid-cornering and medium speed corners. Looking back from Lynch then, there's Bayless, he's been there, you know, he's gave them the position but hasn't really fallen back at all. This pack behind, all waiting for something to happen, it seems, and Robbie Heck is the most animated at the moment.
Yeah, Heck has really got the red mist descended, got the bit between his teeth. Let's see whether he can put that pressure onto him. So, just taking into consideration, we saw some drivers fighting up the sharp end of the grid. The likes of Mark Pinnell, he was at the sharp end of the grid in that first race, Jimmy, in Group 3 cars. He's not at the sharp end at all in these Group 4 cars. And Alfa Romeo down in 16th position and plumb last by quite some way. Wasn't very quick in qualifying there either. Why do we think that that may have been? Why are we not seeing the best out of Mark Pinnell in these races?
Maybe it's the manufacturer he's with. Maybe he's not really gelling with those guys. I mean, but Alfa Romeo, we found, isn't really. They're not had a good run in the BOP, if we're honest. They've got a car that's good in the corners, but they're so slow in the straights that there's nothing they can do with it.
It's a very common occurrence, and it's always just good to explain that to those who are new and watching the top 16 Superstars for the first time. If you are new, welcome along. It's great to have you here, and thank you very much indeed for joining us for round 28. So, 6 laps now remain, soon to become 5 very shortly here for these drivers as we come over the timing line once more, heading in towards that first corner. Now, again, settling down between these drivers. They're all relatively close to one another, but they're not sort of making too many moves or getting too aggressive with each other at these stages. Do you think they're just biding their time here, just trying to sort of wait for the opportune moment, wait until the closing few laps to make their moves, close up?
There could be an element of that. It could also just be that they are all pushing right now, and these are just the gaps. Sometimes this happens where you just get sort of in this sort of train where there's a couple of attempts to win each car, and that's as close as you can get, not because of dirty air, but because of that. It's just the pace. That's how similar everybody is. Meanwhile, this is something that is starting to develop again. It's Bayless and Lynch, and I've seen Bayless be he's fast through this first sector and through the Degners, but then sort of falls away a little bit on the straights a bit, again sort of coming into what we were saying earlier, that Porsche might not have the legs in a straight line.
I think it's definitely faster in the corners, there's no doubt about it, and that McLaren seems to be struggling a little bit more now. Maybe it's starting to wear out its tyres. Speaking of that, I'm really impressed with Parker Leach. Bear in mind he qualified down in P9. He's up into P4. This is a great ascension through the field regardless. If the checkered flag fell now, I think he'd be quite happy with that. But if he can sniff an opportunity at a podium, maybe we'll see him coming good. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen an Audi fighting for the podium. Not to spoil any results of any other regions, but if you haven't seen them, go and have a watch of the Oceania region, because it was a very exciting race in the Manufacturer Series. But that's then. This is now. And you can see these drivers all in a very long train as they come down in towards 130R here.
Did you know Jeff Gallen's in this race, Tom?
No, the thing is, he's been so anonymous, mate. He might as well have gone to the Gran Turismo cafe at Motegi, had a cup of coffee, come back on. He'd probably still be leading, wouldn't he?
No, it's going to go off for some shaved ice. Very popular snack here at Suzuka, I hear. So we'll go off, have a little snack, get back in the car again. You know, we have a joke. You know, we mess around a bit, but this is just a dominant performance by Jeff Gallen. You know, these are all Group 4 cars that are all very, very similar. We've not seen that Viper really be competitive at this sort of track before, and yet Jeff Gallen is making it happen. You know, you've got a V10 engine at the front, a detuned V10. Trying to get this car to fit Group 4 regs, you have to add a bit of weight, take a bit of power away. You know, it's not the not quite as powerful as the road car, probably not quite as heavy either. But at this point, you know, you're just seeing the absolute speed of Jeff Gallen and the consistency and what he can bring to any manufacturer. It's very impressive.
And one thing to mention as well, of course, is that all of these drivers are on a very, very similar level as well. A lot of them have made it to World Tour events. Tristan Bayless, Robbie Head, Kevin Pounder, Randall Hayward and so on, Andrew Brooks, etc., Armin Aga-Khan. They've all made it to these World Tour events. Jeff Gallen, again, a driver who has been consistently at the sharp end of these top 16 Superstars races. So to be doing exactly what he's doing in such a close spec class is just so impressive, and it's so difficult to overstate just how impressive his performance has been. Look there in the background though as well, because Bayless versus Lynch is getting pretty close to one another. Robbie Head's been given another penalty here for some reason. Not sure what that's all about. He's down in P6 and we don't know how big that penalty is, but I tell you what, he'll be quite happy to I guess turn his console off, and it's a 2-second penalty. Oh dear. So he must have had contact then, as you say, Jimmy, with somebody else, and he's about to serve that penalty coming out of this spoon curve onto the back straight. And I dare say that Robbie Head will be glad when this race is over.
If that were me, it would be a wheel exit window, I think, at that point. It's very frustrating to have your race dictated that way, but you've got to play by the rules. If you don't, then you get a slap, as is tradition in the GT Sport Online races. See, the Bayless, that's interesting. You see how he closes up there through to 130R, and then they come out of 130R, and he actually loses a bit of space. Now watch Parker Leach in this Audi off the corner. That Audi usually has a better exit, but I think actually now it's starting to suffer with a little bit of tyre wear. It's fallen back a little bit. We're on board with him now, coming down the straight at the moment. And yeah, you're seeing the speed difference isn't actually that much here. I thought the Audi would be a bit quicker down the straight than these guys in front, but I think maybe Bayless being pulled along a little bit by that McLaren, which seems to have a lot of legs everywhere on the circuit, to be honest. But Parker Leach, again, this has been a great performance for him. We can't understate that at all. Started down, I think, in 9th position, and is now sitting in 4th. Of course, there have been a few penalties that have been flying around, but he's been clever enough to stay out of trouble, and that's part of his race as well. It's not just about being quick, it's about getting to the end of the race in the shortest time possible.
So then coming through into the left-hander before the Degners, very long sweeping curve through then. You've got to jam it on the anchor, send it into that corner and hope that the front end sticks, which is going to be proving more and more problematic for these drivers, I dare say, as we come in towards these closing stages now, as the tyres get worn out. A bit wide there in the background for Kevin Pounder. That Hyundai just a little bit off track, thankfully not exceeding track limits, didn't gain any time as a result of that. Looks like Lim's picked up a penalty, as has Danny Solis down in 12th position, so his race not going well at all. It's really been one to forget here for Danny Solis and Robbie Head. It's not been good, has it?
Yeah, not been great for Solis across both races, unfortunately. He'll want to forget this one, definitely. What happened to Subaru, man? Subaru were fast at the start of this, and they've just sort of fallen away.
Yeah, they have tailed off a bit, haven't they? I wonder whether that's something to do with the BOP, or maybe it's just down to the drivers not able to get the maximum out of their cars. Not to do a disservice there to Danny Solis, but because he was fighting at the sharper end. Maybe it's just Group 4 trim. Maybe it's just not as quick in Group 4 trim, and it's more of a Group 3 car. We've seen that with Alfa Romeo, we've seen that with other machinery as well. So, I mean, it could be something to do with that. There's a variety of different reasons as to what it could be. We don't have a definitive answer. But either way, it is a shame to not see them fighting.
Why
the
not,
sharp end?
Where's the definitive answer?
God dear, well, you would come down on one or the other.
everyone's getting aggressive now. Everyone's getting angry. Right, what are we looking at right now? We've got Bayless, we've got Lynch, and Bayless is not close enough. He can't get that last couple of attempts. He gets within 2 or 3 attempts, almost is there, and then Lynch just sort of pulls away again. There isn't much time left in this race. We're on the on 13th lap of 16, so just under 4 laps to go, if you include the one we're on as well, of course. And Lynch is looking like he is fairly handy here. But you're seeing now on board with Bayless, this is the difference in cornering speed. This is where the Porsche comes good, but there's nowhere to overtake here. You come out of the S's, you come up through Dunlop curve here, so easy to run wider and exit. You can see Lynch understeering a bit there, and that's he's playing with fire there, because the closer you get to the outside of the track, the more likely you're going to pick up a little bit of grass. And if you even touch the grass on the outside, you lose all the grip from the tyre, the front right tyre, which is loaded through that corner, and just find yourself spearing off into the gravel. So it's definitely a risk versus reward, that Dunlop corner.
And talk us through, I want to stay on board actually here coming through this hairpin, but talk us through coming out of this hairpin and the run down into Spoon, because it looks quite easy from the outside, but I dare say it's not, because we've seen a few drivers getting it wrong into there.
Yeah, you've got to be careful through here, because these Group 4 cars, they do have a little bit of aero coming through this right-hander, but if you get the line wrong, you can quite easily find yourself understeering through the second part here, and then getting all out of sorts for Spoon coming in here. So here it is. It's a bit of a late apex, a late run-off corner here. You have to go way out wide, and then just convince yourself, don't turn in yet, and then turn in at the last moment, run out on this curve on the outside, and then just focus on corner exit there. That's the most important thing, because you'll be carrying that extra speed all the way down the straight up towards 130R. Again, Tristan Bayless is in the draft, up to 130R now, all the way up to the right-hand side of the track. Let's see what he's like through there. So it's a big lift on the way in this Group 4 car. Fast through there than Connor Lynch was as well, though. And then harden the brakes just before the 100-metre mark. You can cut a little bit of this of these curbs here, a little bit, but not too much. We've seen people get penalties there. It's about as much as you can get away with. Any more than that, you'll get the 0.5 second cut track penalty. And then we go down the straight, and here it's just a matter of tucking in the car in front of you.
Yep, over the start-finish line we go then with Tristan Bayless. You can sense the frustration from him now, can't you, as he just tries to close that gap down, but it's just getting further and further away. Hang on a minute, here we go. Kevin Pounder kept Parker Leach into the first corner, side by side, on the inside of the Hyundai. Really muscles out Parker Leach, their textbook move, but it looks like Leach is going to try and get the switchback coming out of the exit of the corner. They're going to run side by side into the S-Benz. Pounder does hold on and does get ahead of Parker Leach. So that was a very nicely timed move there from the American.
Yeah, you can really sweep in there and just essentially deny the guy behind you the apex and just cut across his nose, and it's hard to come back from that. And Kevin had no choice really, given that Leach was right on the outside, so he had to make that position up. Now it's a bit too late, I think, for him to catch up the guys in front, Bayless and Lynch, so it might not be a podium stay for Kevin Pounder, but more points on the board, one more place. It's all good, it all helps towards the standings at the end of this, of course. Only got a couple of rounds left, so this, one more, and then one more after that, and that's it. So it's looking like we are in the last stages now, so every position does matter.
Certainly does, and of course we do want all of our drivers to be performing as best as they can, and sometimes the luck doesn't fall in your way, the cards don't fall in your favour. I'm thinking about Robbie Head and Danny Solis in particular over the course of this race. It has been a very tricky one for them. Not been tricky by the likes of things for Jeffrey Gallen. 6.3 seconds he there sits out in front of Connor Leach at the moment. So Christopher Lynch, rather, I should say. Get that back and in the right order. I'm talking about Parker Leach in front is who I'm thinking about. My mind's on other things. Here is Randall Hayward then, who we're riding on board with, who's trying to put that pressure on to the Audi driver. Coming in towards 130R we go. You get a real sensation of speed from this bumper cab. Does he find his way through? Not quite at the moment, but certainly I think he's going to be thinking about lining one up as we come onto this penultimate lap here at Suzuka, and it's all about biding your time and just not pouncing too soon, because it can put you on the back foot if you do launch a move too early. But look here at Randall Hayward, look at the drive he gets out of that final corner. He's really in the slipstream now of Parker Leach, who's a little bit further back from Kevin Pounder. The slipstream will still be effective there for Leach, but not quite as much as it will be for Hayward. But still, the straight line speed of that Audi looks pretty good, because Leach was able to defend from Hayward. The BMW driver not able to put alongside and going wide at the first turn there, just about gathering it up, but he's really on the ragged edge of adhesion there, and that is going to cost him a few tenths of a second.
As a driver, you have an absolute age when you know you've turned in late for T1, and you can just see the end of the circuit and be like, oh no, here it comes. And he did a really good job to save that, and importantly, get right up to the back of Leach again. So that BMW in these later stages really looking good in its tyres, and Parker Leach struggling in that Audi so much so that it's now going to be two abreast coming into the first deck. Now Hayward's got the grip and just drives past Leach there, so even with a mistake, that is the difference in speed between it. Oh, and I saw him do that. I saw him take a bit too much on the inside of that first deck, and I thought, oh, that's a bit much on the inside. Is that a penalty? Yes, it is. And you know why that happened? Because he had to take a slightly different line. He was unsighted on the way in, turned in where he thought he needed to turn in usually, turned a bit too early, and Hayward picks up a penalty. Parker Leach will be thinking, thank you, I'll take that back.
Yeah, we're kicking himself after that one. Randall Hayward, disappointing for him, but it's only a half-second penalty. It won't cost him too much time. Andrew Brooks is a second further down the road as well. Let's see what it does cost him. It's surely going to cost him the position to Parker Leach here, but is he going to be able to try and just get his focus back in order for the final lap of the race? Because that's when he'll have to think about pouncing on Parker Leach once more. So let's see, coming out of the spoon curve, and past goes Parker Leach, back into vision he comes. Where is Andrew Brooks going to come back into the party? He's got the advantage of the slipstream going down to 130R, so he'll be keeping an eye on his mirrors here, will Randall Hayward. Brooks will be sniffing an opportunity, his confidence having been pretty much shattered over the course of this race. It's really been a disappointing day at the office here for the Citroen driver. Into the final chicane we go, so from attacking to defending for Randall Hayward as we come on to start this final lap here.
This is going to be it, really. This is the last chance to make up those places. Andrew Brooks has had a shocker of a race so far. Maybe just to try and recover one more position. Not quite as bad as Heck, though, behind him in 8th position. Jeff Gallen, meanwhile, that gap 6.3 seconds. He can cruise to the end of the race now. The gap is so big that on the mini-map, you can see he's on his own. He's just out there chilling now. There's no one behind at the moment. He's got a nice... He can go 6 seconds slower around this lap and still win this race. You could say he could have a punctured tyre and still get to the end of this race and still win the race.
No, preposterous. I won't have that. No one could ever win a race with a punctured tyre, Jimmy. That's never happened before.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Goodness me. Goodness me. Well, anyway, hopefully that won't happen for Jeffrey Gallen. He won't have to emulate Lewis Hamilton, but he could pick up 6 seconds worth of penalties on this last lap if he wanted to and just miss out an entire corner. I don't think he will, but either way, he's doing I'd be impressed as well. I mean, there's not really that many corners you can cut here at Suzuka, to be honest. I mean, you could if you wanted to, of course, but
I think
probably
the battle we've got to keep an eye on, I think. Yeah, definitely, but the battle we've got to keep an eye on is this one. Here's Bayless. Oh, he half looked then. He half looked at Lynch coming into the hairpin. He's very, very quickly running out of opportunities, is Tristan Bayless. We're coming on now to the last half of the last lap. Lynch has held off Bayless since he passed him a few laps ago, but Bayless has been looking very, very feisty ever since then. He won't be close enough for a move into the spoon curve. He might be close enough on the way out if he can get a good exit and get a draft up towards 130R. This might have been the plan all along. Get close enough to pass and then give him no chance to reply. Here we go then.
Out of the corner we go, onto this straight. Christopher Lynch trying to defend here from Tristan Bayless. Is he going to be able to do so? Looks like he's got a good amount of straight line speed underneath him with that McLaren, but is Bayless going to try and invent something through 130R and line it up into the chicane? That's the crucial question. Meanwhile, the race leader is coming through to the final corner. We'll worry about that later because Bayless has got one more opportunity, but he hasn't got enough chance to get past. But Jeffrey Gallen, what a dominant performance. He wins round 28 of the top 16 superstars in the Manufacturers Series. Christopher Lynch is going to hold on to second position ahead of Tristan Bayless. He gave it all he could there, Bayless, but it wasn't quite enough at the end. Pounder comes home, P4. Randall Hayward just ahead of Parker Leach at the checkered flag. Andrew Brooks coming to the pit lane there on the final lap, trying to emulate Michael Schumacher perhaps. I'm not quite sure what that was all about. Either way, he comes home P8 at the checkered flag. Very close between Richard Castro and Santolino, who made his debut here this weekend and finishes in P10. Does Castro ahead of Santolino. But what about this man here, Jeffrey Gallen? What a performance.
Nothing else you can say, really. That was just textbook. Lights to flag finish. And that was it. That's all he needed to do. He did it, as he always does, incredibly well. Again, we did miss it. Hayward, of course, got back by Leach even after that penalty. So great finish by Hayward there as well. But I think that Bayless could have passed Lynch if he just tried it into 130R. He backed out of it, and as a result, lost momentum through the corner. And Lynch, as you know, he was 3 tenths ahead getting into the chicane. There was no chance to come back at him there. So Bayless maybe being a bit more aggression might have helped there, I think.
Confirmation of the final results, as you can see on your screen at the moment. That was a masterclass performance there from Jeffrey Gallen. When they make it look as easy as that, that's when you know that they are really pushing very hard. And Jeffrey Gallen there, he was even on his last lap 7 tenths of a second quicker than Chris Lynch, who finished in second position, which is an unbelievable gap. What an end to the Manufacturers Series race. Jimmy, if you had to pick a driver of the day over the course of those 2 races in the Manufacturers Series or the Nations Cup, who would you be rooting for?
I don't really know because Gallen didn't take part in the Nations Cup race, but I think that I'd say Lynch, unexpectedly, second place for him. I've got to say, we've not seen much of him in the Manufacturers Series or the Nations Series, and to be there in second place, I think is a great result.
Certainly is. Well, what a brilliant race there for Jeffrey Gallen, Christopher Lynch as well, and Tristan Bayless for finishing on the podium in the Manufacturers Series race disappointment there for Danny Solis and the likes of the other drivers who didn't quite have as good a performance at the checkered flag. Robbie Head and Andrew Brooks will also be disappointed with their finishes. But what a great end to round 28 of the top 16 superstars. There's only a few days left until the finale of stage 3 of our online season for the FIA Gran Turismo Championships. Round 30 will be coming your way for the North America region very shortly indeed. From Jimmy Broadbent and from myself, Tom Brooks, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we'll see you next time.